Hello, my name is Will Mitchell. I'm a professor of strategy here at Duke University. This brief video provides an introduction to business capabilities analysis. The video supports the primer on strategic analysis, which provides additional content that you can work with. The core purpose of capabilities analysis is for you to identify the strengths and weaknesses in your current capabilities relative to the opportunities and threats that you've identified in your competitive environment. And your goal, the purpose is to identify the strengths and weaknesses. Your goal is to achieve and or create capabilities that will address the threats and take advantage of the desirable opportunities. Remember what your strategy is. You want to maintain, you want differentiation and efficiency advantages relative to your competitors. So your goal with capabilities is to build capabilities that allow you to do that, to have differentiation advantages and or efficiency advantages. And so first you need a clear understanding of the competitive advantages and disadvantages of your current strategy. To know what your differentiation advantages are relative to competitors, what your differentiation disadvantages are relative to competitors. To know where you have efficiency advantages, to know where you're at cost disadvantages. And look at this across your current portfolio of goods and services, so that you know which which parts have differentiation, which parts have cost, and which are struggling. And here you need to be honest about where you have advantages and where you're struggling or to keep pace or to catch up. It's very easy to look at what we're doing and say, well, it must be good because we're doing it. And you've got to be willing to look outside and really be aware of what things really are advantages and where in fact you're not. So purpose, strengths and weaknesses, goals, figure out your capabilities and what you need to do, where you want to fit them, strategy, differentiation, and efficiency. And when we're doing this, I really stress three aspects of capabilities analysis. First, I like to make a distinction between functional capabilities and organizational capabilities, and I'll dig into that in a bit more in depth in a moment. But it's important to think about both about what you do, which is the functional capabilities, but also how you do it, the organizational capabilities, and how these underlie your current portfolio of goods and of services. So that's first, functional capabilities and organizational capabilities. Second, it's important to distinguish between what I call necessary capabilities and key capabilities. Where necessary capabilities are the things that you have to do because everybody in the industry does them, but they don't give you an advantage because you know better than anybody else. Key capabilities are the things that give you competitive advantage. They're the things that you do better than someone else. And I'll talk about this in a bit more in a moment, but what we'll do is we'll put capabilities to what I call the VRIN test, the V-R-I-N test. And I'll tell you in a moment what V-R-I-N-N stand for. But the basic point is that to be a key capability, to give you a competitive advantage, a capability has to pass this VRIN test. Third, it's critically important for you to recognize capability constraints and capability traps that can bind your business within obsolete market positions. Not only do you need to know what capabilities you need to have in the future, you've got to be willing to look at your capabilities and say which of these are trapping us into places that we don't want to be, and be willing to get rid of them. Now let's expand on those three steps in a bit more depth. Start with functional capabilities and organizational capabilities. Again, functional capabilities are what you can do. Your technical skills, your marketing skills, your production skills, your clinical skills, whatever the technical aspects of your business model are. And these are clearly, you got to have them. You've got to be able to produce goods and services. Organizational capabilities are how you do it. They're the administrative support, the staff support, the organizational processes, human resource processes, the partnership processes that tie your functional capabilities together and actually move you from what to how, and actually help you achieve the end products and services. And both of these are important. You've got to have strong functional capabilities. You also have to have strong organizational capabilities. And in fact, in many ways, though, it's the organizational capabilities that are often the most important. They're the glue or the fluid glue that holds pieces together and allows them to work flexibly. And the primer that we wrote provides a bit more depth about this and a bit more background about this. But ultimately, certainly in my experience across research across many organizations, the strongest organizations, the ones that maintain competitive advantage over time, tend to be ones that have strong organizational capabilities that can move in and move out functional capabilities as they're needed, and as they become as old capabilities become obsolete, and as they identify a new need for new functional capabilities. So in my experience, at least, frankly based both on research and on a lot of working with organizations, you need to pay very close attention to organizational capabilities as complements to a strong base of functional capabilities. So that's first, just a bit of depth on functional and organizational capabilities. And again, dig into the primer to get examples of different types of capabilities within those two subsets. Second, as I said earlier, let's distinguish between necessary capabilities and key capabilities, where necessary capabilities are the things that allow you to keep pace with competitors, and key capabilities are the skills that allow you to generate competitive advantage and higher margins. And as I said a moment ago, key capabilities need to pass the VRIN test, which is kind of an ugly acronym, but it's just barely pronounceable. V-R-I-N-N, where V stands for value, R stands for rare, I stands for inimitable, and N stands for non-substitutable. And value basically means that the capabilities produce something, goods and services that customers value, that they're willing to pay for, and willing to pay for at prices that exceed the cost of making them, so that you can make enough profit to stay in business. So no matter how great a capability is, if it doesn't produce something that customers value, it's not key. It doesn't help you. So that's value. Rare means there's only a few of them. If there's a lot of them, they may be necessary, but they won't be key, because your competitors can get them and use them just as you can. So key capabilities have to pass the rarity test. There's a few of them out there within the relevant market, and others. And you've got them, and others don't. So that's the R. I is the inimitable, which means that your competitors can't copy you. They can't find, either because you have some intellectual property, or they don't understand it. It's ambiguous and uncertain how you put it together. But there's something about your capability that makes it difficult or impossible for your competitors to do it themselves, to look at what you're doing and say, oh, well, we can do that just as easily, and imitate you. So it's got to be valuable, it's got to be rare, it's got to be inimitable, and it also needs to be non-substitutable. That's the N in VRIN. Non-substitutable means you can't. There's no alternative way of doing it. You've got one way of producing the good and service. Somebody else can use can find a different way. You get to the same point. From the point of view of the customer, it's the same thing. Same value to the customer, even though it's using a different component, using a different capability. So key capabilities have to pass the VRIN test. If they're not VRIN, and really all four pieces of VRIN, they'll produce little or no competitive advantage. And it's important for you to recognize, frankly, that most capabilities are not VRIN. Most capabilities are at best necessary. They're things you have to do to stay pace with your competitors, but they don't generate competitive advantage. And it's critically important that you know which ones of your capabilities are VRIN, because that's where your money comes from. That's where your ability to generate enough profit to stay in business comes from. And you need to understand them in depth, understand how to protect them, how to build them, how to extend them, how to make sure that you stay focused on them rather than becoming deflected on things that are actually less important. Third, let's think about traps a little bit, because it's important to recognize that capabilities can create traps rather than advantages. And I like to think of three types of traps, okay? And I'm going to talk briefly about a competency trap, about a rear view insight trap, and about a tunnel vision trap. And a competency trap occurs when you're reluctant to change something that you're good at. And you're so good at it that you really don't want to change it, even though it no longer suits the competitive advantage, the competitive environment, and is no longer generating competitive advantages. And so you've got to be willing to shed things that you were good at in the past, in fact you're still good at, which are no longer providing competitive advantage. And you need to be brutal with yourself as an individual and as an organization about saying, hey, this was great, but its time has passed, it's time to move on to something else. Rear view insight, the second trap, occurs when you look at the past rather than the future. You do industry analysis, you do capabilities analysis based on what was happening in the past. And that's a very easy trap to fall into. It's comforting because it's static, it's stable. It's comforting because you can often get a lot of data about the past, and it's nice having data and information. The future is uncomfortable because we don't exactly know where it's going. It's uncomfortable because it's hard to get data about it. And so there's a tendency to turn around and look at the past rather than look at the future. And if we look at the past only, we generate insights that might make sense for the past, but don't make sense for the future. And it's a very easy trap to fall into, to rely on rear view insight. The third trap is tunnel vision, to focus so narrowly on a limited set of capabilities that you miss the emergence of a new set of skills. It's often closely tied to competency and looking in the past. But even in the future, you can look at a small set of skills and not recognize that there's an emerging set of capabilities that trump them. And so really your job as a strategic manager is to help your organization avoid these traps, to avoid competency traps, to avoid tunnel vision, to avoid rear view insight. And let's be honest, much of your job as a strategic manager is to help your organization climb out of these traps when you fall into them. Because most of us, in fact all of us, at some point do fall into them. We get so enamored with what we have done, we get so focused on a small number of things, we look at the past, we fall into one of the traps, and we need to be able to climb out quickly before we get buried down there in the hole. And it's your job as a strategic manager to avoid the traps as much as possible, and when you fall in, help us get out. Now, here's a simple tool that we can use with capabilities analysis, and this is the value chain. And I've put up, I've used a very basic value chain with this slide, which has a set of functional capabilities and a list of organizational capabilities in it as a starting point. And this is the sort of thing that you'd want to revise and adapt and fit to your own business context, your own organizational context. But what the value chain does is it forces us to sit down and look at our business model and say, what are the most important capabilities that we need? What are the steps? What's the flow? And here I've moved it from technical, sort of the research and development and design stage, through production. And this can be production of physical goods, but it can also be production of services. The activities you take in order to get goods and services into your customers' hands, and then into the market, to the customer. The marketing skills, the advertising skills, the distribution skills, the service skills that you use in bringing products and services to your customers. And so these are sort of the three basic building blocks of functional skills within a value chain. And again, when you're doing value chain analysis and doing capabilities analysis for your own business, your own organization, it's useful to break it down into these steps and think about what is the flow of activities and what are the flow of value-producing steps that get from the beginning of your business through to the end. And then on top, spanning the functional skills, are the organizational skills. And here I've listed management, I've listed financial, I've listed IP, which stands for intellectual property. I've listed information systems, the organizational structure, and the interorganizational links. And there's a whole range of organizational capabilities that you can use to span and organize your functional capabilities. And again, this is a basic model to get you started. You'll need to look at your own business and decide what are the key organizational skills that make sense in your context. Because remember what we're doing. I mean, what our goal is and what our purpose is. Our goal is basically identify strengths and weaknesses in functional and organizational capabilities. We're doing that because we wanted to address the threats that we saw in industry analysis, and we're doing that because we wanted to deal with to take advantage of opportunities that we discovered. And we're trying to identify key capabilities that pass the VRIN test, capabilities that are valuable, that are rare, that are inimitable, that are non-substitutable. And the value chain helps you get down, identify what the capabilities are, figure out which ones are necessary, figure out which ones are strong, figure out which ones are weak, figure out which ones are key. Okay, let's just pull together our thoughts around capabilities analysis. And there's really 4 goals here with capabilities analysis. First, we want to identify VRIN capabilities. Capabilities that are valuable, rare, inimitable, and non-substitutable. Capabilities that you need to reinforce and extend. The capabilities that are the basis of your competitive advantage and that you need to just deeply be able to work with. Second, you need to be able to identify weaknesses that you need to address in order to deal with threats. To know what threats are in your environment, know what capabilities that you need to fix or get in order to deal with those threats. Third, you need to look for capability opportunities, strengths that you can build on in order to take advantage of opportunities, things you're already doing that you could easily bring to bear on filling in the opportunities that you saw in the dynamic competitive environment. Fourth, you want to move beyond your existing set of capabilities and not become trapped by just looking for things that you can do with what you've already got, but look for new capabilities that you could obtain that would allow you to take advantage of feasible opportunities. So that capability building is not just applying what you've already got, but it's looking for things that you could get and identifying places that you could go to get them, partners to work with, new people to bring in, that would allow you to build a new capability base that take advantage of opportunities that are emerging in your environment.